All right, let's start out with a bit of a thought experiment, just to get kind of in it here today. I want you to imagine a scale of 1 to 10, okay? And this is a happiness scale. 10 is, I am phenomenally happy. I don't think I'll have another day quite like this one. This is just the best day of my life, okay? That's a 10. If you come down to an 8, it's gonna be, this is a great day. If you come down at 1 day. And if you come down to 5, you're, it's not terrible, it's fine, it's okay. 5 is okay. 3 is, okay, I'm on the struggle bus today, guys. This is a difficult day. 1 is, I think I should be in my therapist's office right now. That's a 1, okay? So 10 to 1, so you got that kind of in the spectrum here. Now we're gonna divide the room right in half. So I don't know who put the table there in the middle, but that's unfortunate. On this side, you're on this side, and you're, no friends, on this side. Yeah, there you go. Like, we're gonna divide this friendship into 2, okay? So this is where the thought experiment comes in. This group here, my left, this group here, my right, we'll come to you in a second. On this side, I want you to imagine that on the way here today, whether you took an Uber or a flight or you walked or you scooted over, somewhere along the way, you came across a crisp, clean $100 bill on the ground. Now, there's nobody around, there's no security guards, it's like could be a big empty parking lot, but there's nobody there. And if you didn't pick it up, basically you're littering. So you pick it up and you put it in your pocket, all right? Now, scale of 1 to 10, I want you to think about where you were before you found the $100 bill, okay? Find that number on the scale. 1, therapist, 10, best day of my life. Everything from here is downhill, okay? What's your number? And after you find the $100 bill, how many points would you go up? Would you go by 1 point? Would you go from a 3 to a 4, a 5 to a 6, 5 to an 8? Okay, you understand? Okay, so how many people went up by 1? You don't have to tell us how happy you are, because that's a little too personal, especially if you're 1, because then we're all gonna be really worried about you and that kind of thing. So how many people, you found that $100 bill and you're imagining picking it up, you put it in your pocket, and you're thinking, yeah, this is great. How many people went up by 1 point at least? All right, almost everybody. Those of you who didn't, they're living a different life altogether. You might be thinking, I have so much going on, the last thing I need is the pressure of how to use this $100 bill. I'm stressed now, it's actually going the other way, I wish I'd never found it. Okay. If that's the case, we can talk later. But how many people went up by 2 points? Okay, a few less. How many people went up 4 points? Full 4 points. Okay, great. All right, good. 3 people here at the front who desperately need an infusion of cash in their life, all right? Now, over here, this is my good side. You didn't find a $100 bill, and we're hearing about this now, but you're in luck because in this thought experiment, I have made myself a multi-billionaire, because why not? And so when you get here and you're hearing this, we didn't get a $100 bill, I just walk around and give you all a $100 bill. Now, there's a caveat. You can't spend it on yourself. You have to go and use it for somebody else. You can buy a gift for somebody, you can buy a bear, you can buy a trip, you can buy a bus ticket, you can give it to a homeless person, you can give it to your mom, it doesn't matter, but you cannot use it on yourself, you have to give it away, okay? Now, think of where you are today on this scale, 1 to 10. You got your number? How many points up would you go finding the $100 bill and giving it to someone? But I want you to really imagine, where would you give it? Would you give it to a friend? A family member? Is there somebody who's been hoping for tickets to, I don't know, one of the big concerts that comes through Dallas all the time? I'm not a music guy, big music guy, so I don't know. Okay, you got your number? How many people went up by a number 1? 1 point. 1. 2 points? A few more. 3 points? A few more. 4 points? A few more. Okay, but basically the same. What's interesting is there were less ones overall than there were on this side, but this side has a larger population as well. This side all went to the restroom, so we'll ask them when they get back. They did this study in Vancouver, BC. Michael Norton, who I met a couple times and talked about and heard present on this material as well. And if you want to get any of the research or data that I'm going to refer to, I dislike it when speakers say things like, the research shows. I'm like, what research? Come by the social social rev table. We'll take your name, and I will send you a great little handout, videos, and interesting articles to read and that kind of thing. So anything you hear, you're like, I don't know, just come over there. So Michael Norton's study, they went and they gave these students at the University of British Columbia an envelope. And to this group over here, they said, here's $5 to $20. They said, how happy are you now? They wrote that down. We're going to call you tonight. You can use this money however you want. You can spend it on yourself, buy a coffee, give it to a friend, we don't care. And they did that. And then they got the results at the end of the day. Did having this money make you any happier? By and large, no. There was no statistical variance between how they felt before and how they felt after. Then they gave another group of students, same envelope, but the condition was you had to spend it on other people. Buy somebody coffee, buy somebody whatever. This group, when they called later that day, did it improve your happiness? Everyone felt better. It improved their happiness. So that was an interesting study, and they thought, well, maybe if we go somewhere else, let's see if it's true in different parts of the world. So they went to Uganda, did the same thing. Still, same amount, $5 to $20, but it translates into quite a bit more. Here's the money for you, spend it on yourself. Here's the money for you, spend it on somebody else. This group, again, this group was like, oh, that's nice. Didn't really change their happiness. This group, substantially different. Well, then they thought, well, maybe it's how they're spending the money. Right? Because one of the stories that came back out of Uganda was this lady was walking along, saw a longtime friend who she hadn't seen for a while, found out that she had a medical condition, had the money, gave it to her. That $20 translates into 10,000 Ugandan currency, and it was a contribution to her getting better. I mean, it was a critical illness, and it helped where she was. Whereas in Canada, somebody relayed that they bought a teddy bear for their niece. Didn't matter the severity of the situation or the context or the impact, the happiness difference increased a similar amount. Well, that was interesting. So that, because we tend to think about social impact or the impact we have on the world, like if I can make a big difference in the world, I'll feel better. But it turns out it was just simply the act of giving that mattered. Okay, well, let's go to Brussels, which is what they did next. And they went to a pharmaceutical team in Brussels, a sales team, and they did the same thing again. 5 to 20 euro this time. I think it was actually 15 euro. Spend it on yourselves. Most people put it in the pocket, didn't think about it again. The other sales team spent it on each other. They outperformed this group for the rest of the year. They had little piñata parties where they pooled it together, put weird stuff in a piñata, beat it to pieces, yada, yada. They perform better. You're like, okay, well, that's a sales team, and salespeople are kind of odd anyway. So let's go to some more normal people, like, say, the kind of regular folk who might join an intramural dodgeball team. Same thing. Here's the dodgeball teams. You can spend it on yourself, spend it on others. This team won more contests, more events than this one did for the rest of the year. So what is this saying? This is saying something really interesting about us as a species, and it is this. Giving feels good, which is an interesting thing to know for me in my profession because I work with companies on their employee giving and volunteering programs. And the basic question we have to answer is, why do people help? Now, let me pause for a second and let you know, I have Tourette's syndrome, so some of the gestures, while I think help the presentation, are not necessarily my choice. Like the dancing. I am not a dancer. I certainly don't get up on stage and dance in front of people, never would. Oh, but the guy inside of me thinks it's fun. So that's what's happening here, okay? So just strap on that seatbelt, hold still. Nobody's gonna get hurt, but you might get cursed at a little bit. It's not personal, okay? I don't even really know you, so it's fine. All right, okay, so that's out of the way, that's a caveat. So if we cannot answer the question, why do we help? Why do human beings help other people? Then we can't really do very well for companies that will have these employee giving and volunteering programs. So that's a fundamental question. And the reason people like to give comes down to a process in our brains called the reward system. We have several different reward systems in our brains, right? We have one around when you eat food, and it's good food, not bad food, it feels good, doesn't it? It feels like it's satisfying, it's enjoyable, there's a social aspect. What else? Runner's high. How many people have had a runner's high? All right, good, healthy group. You run so far, you think you're gonna die, then the afterburner kicks in, you think, I can run forever, and then it really stops and you throw up on the side of the road. Those endorphins, naturally occurring morphine in your brain, are part of the brain reward system that is built into our behavior for the 100,000s of years that our ancestors have been trying to survive on this planet. Certain brains, and we all share a common ancestor, developed this endorphin concoction that rewarded behaviors that kept the species alive. Eating, running, yoga high, it's true, I don't know why yet. Here's an obvious one, sexual activity. I mean, there's a lot of drama, right, and cost, and just it's confusing, and I feel bad about myself at the time. But, you know, after it's over, you're like, I can do that again, right? It's why we end up with minivans. We don't know when to stop. So, helping other people, the helper's high has a reward system that when you study it in a magnetic imaging machine, functional magnetic imaging machine, you would see that the brain acts almost the same way as people when they're experiencing a runner's high, a yoga high, or sexual activity. I don't know how they got that last category in there, but that's okay. They didn't talk about it in the research either. So, but it's on the same. So evolutionists said, this is so fundamental to our survival as a species, it's baked into the wiring that you inherited when you showed up on the planet. So much so that when you help another person, I'm going backwards, when you help another person, you have these endorphins, the helper's high, and it makes you feel good, and we do it again and again. And it explains why we're willing to step into tough situations, we're willing to give away our time, our energy, our money, access to our networks, our skills, all of these things to people we know or people maybe we don't, and we've been doing it forever since throughout recorded history. Humans have been helping other human beings. Why? Because we are compelled to. It's the same as eating and sexual activity. We must help others, and it feels good. If you ask people in companies that we work with, if you ask the average person who goes and volunteers and you said, why do you help? They would say, because it feels good. Now that's the pleasure side of things. Now, the other side has to do with how we experience pain. In our brain, there's something called a pain matrix. It used to be that scientists believed that you felt pain in a particular area of your brain, but now we know from these MRIs and other things that you can see where it happens, and it happens through the brain in something called the pain matrix. And that means there are neurons throughout your brain that light up when you're in pain. Okay, so here's another, it's not really a thought experiment, but I need you to imagine a story. How many people know David Blaine? He's a street magician, he's been around forever. Okay, good. He kind of presents as an odd fellow, but really mysterious, and so I'm totally into his magic. Ricky Gervais, okay, fan or no, you've probably heard his name. Oh, okay, there we go. So that's the dancing side of things. So David Blaine had this trick. He would go to people's houses, and he would sit down with them, and in this particular one, he had this very long, like really ridiculously long needles, like something you might crochet with kind of thing. Very, 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 very sharp. And he sits down and he rolls up his sleeve, and Ricky is right here. He says, I'm going to do something. And he points it at his bicep, and Ricky's like, what are you doing? And without warning, pushes it in, and now the point is pushing out the other side of his skin. You know what I mean? Like, it's in there, and it comes out, and he's like this, in and out. Ricky is like, oh my gosh, he gets that, it's just, what are you doing? Lots of cursing. He doesn't have Tourette's, he's British, so that's why, but lots of cursing, and then he pulls it out, no blood, right? Interesting trick. But the more interesting thing is Ricky's response. And if you visualized it, you may have had the same response. You may have had that kind of wince, that kind of feeling. And that is because there are neurons inside of your brain buried deep down inside that can't tell the difference between being in pain and seeing somebody else in pain. And that pain caused by somebody else's distress is fast. You know how fast a blink is when you're not thinking about it? It's 1/15 of that time. It responds very quickly. Your pain matrix lights up, and you have one of two responses. One is to intervene, stop it. Ricky was doing something, no. And the other one is to get up and leave, which is what Will Smith's family did when he did it at his house. They all screamed and ran out of the room. And David's like sitting there by himself, like they just ran. So we withdraw from the situation, and you've experienced this too, like, I can't deal with the news, there's too much going on, this war in Europe, there's other things that are going on, the politics, I just need to take a break. That is withdrawing from it. You cannot take it because you're experiencing the pain physically, okay? Versus jumping to intercede when somebody's in trouble, there's a tornado, there's a flood, something like that. We show up, we do what's required, and we expend ourselves because we are sharing the pain, the constraints of it. So both these two things together, it feels good when I help, and I'm in pain when I see somebody else in pain, are the reasons why we're compelled to help. But this last part presents us with a bit of a weird problem. Because empathy, which is the ability to feel, to empathize, to fluidly become the other person, I'm feeling, to be in the feeling of the other person, is an amazing human trait, fundamental to our survival as a species. And yet we only feel it for those in our group. What do I mean by group? This comes from social identity theory. There's sort of like, think of these concentric circles of identity. You're doing it today. You'll go around and you'll say, I am this. Are you this? I'm from here. Are you from there? I like this. Do you like this? I'm this music. Do you like? What we're doing with this is trying to find out, are you me? Do we have enough commonality that I can understand you, that we kind of connect, vibe together kind of thing. That is, as you think about the trust that's required in these little tribes wandering all over the planet, yada, 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 that ability to coalesce around shared identities and values, so much so that we can empathize with each other and risk our lives to save each other, critical. But it only works for your in-groups. And for every in-group that you're a part of, work at this company, went to this school, grew up in this neighborhood, I'm of this gender, I speak these languages, all of those kinds of things. For every group that you're a part of that shares some of your interests and perspectives, there are dozens that you're not part of. And this is why we can feel great concern for people that are close to us in proximity, who are like us. But when catastrophe happens in another part of the world, we acknowledge it, but we don't, our matrix doesn't light up. It is built in that way. That's normal. You're not a bad person. That's just normal. But it does mean that we are easily susceptible to dehumanizing our outgroups. And this is the great crisis of humanity as a species. The ability to look at another group and say, you know what our problem is? Them. They're coming here to take our stuff. We're not safe because of them. They want our positions, our place of privilege. They want what we've worked for. They're a threat. The UK went through that, and a self-induced shot in the foot. Their economy is blistering because they were just so afraid of the other. But it is this otherness that has a huge cost. And of course, we're talking about it when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the dark side is we are all pre-programmed to other. Now, you're probably thinking, not me, which is what almost everybody says. All right. So Dr. Osana Harris at the University of Leiden, and he put a number of people in an MRI, and he wanted to see what happened in their medial prefrontal cortex, which is right up front here. This is that very fast, preconscious, reactionary part of the brain. And it's also the part where when I see another human being, I'll get some activity. And when I see a thing like all of these things, there's no activity, it's just flat. So they baselined everybody, and then they showed them pictures of people who might be in their neighborhood, doctors, lawyers, bakers, a whole just random group of people. And it really was a broad spectrum of individuals from different ethnic groups and ages and gender, that kind of thing. And they show the picture, light up, light up, light up, light up. And then they showed an image of somebody, a homeless person. And when they put that in, again, this is very fast, people are not thinking about it, no activity. And except for a few outliers who had experience with homelessness in the past, either through a relative or personally, nobody's brains registered a homeless person as human. So they did it again in another country, and now 27 countries later, it is a universal phenomenon. And he's one of the leading neuroscientists on this othering or this dehumanizing factor. And we talked about it on the phone a couple of years ago. It's just fascinating research. There's some videos you can watch about it as well. It's also very depressing, right? Now, people can think afterwards, well, for the rational part of your brain, this is a human being, but it's the pre-conscious reaction that gets us into trouble. Because propaganda, either political or religious, can plug in and dial down the humanity of that group so that you belong to this group. And this is the reason humanity has these issues with genocide and entire groups turning on neighbors, and what we're seeing happen between cousins in Ukraine and Russia now in Europe. This tendency to other and the ease with which we can be manipulated could be our demise. But all is not lost. There is a solution, because your brain can be plastic. Neuroplasticity in your brain is when you're by the age of 3, your brain is like a wide open. It comes with some pre-programs and that kind of thing, but it is taking in a ton of information. It is just incredibly flexible, like bones and cartilage. When you're younger, you can drop kids on the ground and they basically bounce back. I only know that because it happened on accident a couple times with my own kids. They're all fine now. And so that neuroplasticity, what happens is when you're confronted with a situation that does not fit your expectations, right? If you went out here and you saw a floating chair in this area over here, we would stop and go, what's going on? Oh, must be a magic trick. Is from day one putting this on? Is this alien work? What is going on? We would be fascinated by it. The 15th day that you walk out and see the floating chair and somebody says, what's that? And you're like, I don't know, it's a floating chair. Let's keep going. We just squash. There's no threat and there's no benefit. So it becomes white noise and we put it aside. Neuroplasticity, though, in that moment, when something doesn't fit my expectations, acetylcholine is secreted and my brain becomes somewhat malleable, almost like when I'm younger, and I grow new neural pathways. And again, there are some links if you want to see synaptic pathways form. This is out of an experiment they did with some rats, but it would look very similar in human beings. It is amazing. And neurons that fire together, wire together. This is how, if you ever want to see the world differently, you have got to change, and I have got to change the way my brain is wired, because my worldview is basically a map of my neural net inside. My brain lives in darkness. It has no access to the world except through my senses. But it also determines what my senses can take in and see. So we need to have experiences that challenge the reality and what we think of as normal, and we need to be guided to these new places to think differently about ourselves and the world around us. And that is why employee volunteering, for me, is such an important feature of a company's program. If you really want to get to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the trick is the neural net in a person's brain. It is not necessarily just a checklist. It is very important. My daughter works for an inclusion company. I can't remember the name of it right now, which often happens when I'm taking. But it's about working with law firms to help them understand DEI and aligning to standards and that kind of thing. That's incredibly important structurally, systemically, but the individual brain is key. And without the experiences that challenge the way my brain is wired, I will not know about my tendency to dehumanize another group. Everybody in those MRIs was shocked when they saw the results that they dehumanized a homeless person. And you don't necessarily know it. It's a problem with hidden bias. They stay quite hidden when you go looking for them. And if the checklists are there and we're meeting all the obligations, somehow maybe I become more insulated because I can abide by all these external constructs and I never do the internal work, and I can take all of the bad thinking and behavior that I came in with and I just know how to not show it anymore. And that's not where we're going, right? We don't want people to just curb their behavior so at work they're not doing these things that others. We're hoping for a workplace that you can bring your whole self to work and you can belong. But experience is key. You need to have the experience of the mind and the body. These two things belong together for creating memories and for creating new neural nets. So here's the point. When people can alert to a new situation, say through employee volunteering, and begin to ask new questions. What's going on? What's happening? They can orient to it with the right information. We need to inform people's experiences so that we don't carry these half-understood biases and truths forward in life. And then act, and that's where we'll see the behavior. So I want to, as a result of my experiences, have a psychological change so I see myself differently in the world, a convictional change so I believe differently in the world, and a behavioral change so that I behave differently in the world. If we cannot get our minds around the small changes that need to happen in our brain for the big changes for the future of the species, I fear we are on a merry-go-round that it will just keep happening over and over again. Employee volunteering could be the best way to address the idea of belonging. I'd love to chat with you if you're interested in any of this. If you want to go deeper and further, again, come, we'll take your name down. I'll get you anything you want. It's been great. Thanks for playing the experiments with me. I appreciate being here. I can't wait to meet you.